And you open the door and you step inside. We're inside our hearts. Now imagine your pain is a white ball of healing light. That's right, your pain, the pain itself, is a white ball of healing light. I don't think so.
That hurt.
You were looking for a way to change your life. You got it.
I'm stopping this.
It's already done, so shut up.
What kind of sick game are you playing? Oh my God.
Where is my mind? Where is my... This is too much!
In the end, you will thank me. Whoa! Whoa!
So here it is in the second hour. It is what I'm going to title Fight Club for a reason. And my guests here, you've already heard from one of them, Dylan Wade, who is the host of The Truth Speaks when he gets his show going. And when people aren't screwing around with his archives or YouTube isn't locking him out or whatever else, The Truth Speaks, and also the guy who writes the movie reviews at zeninthecar.com. So that is Dylan Wade, and he's one of my guests in the second hour here, and the other is my old friend Daniel Louis Crumpton.
The more polite guest who waited for you to introduce him.
Yes. See, that just
Daniel, if I see a comedic opportunity and I don't take it, I feel like I'm cheating everybody.
Yeah, and of course, the opportunity to ruin the organization of the broadcast is also something that you must take. Yes, I know. It's okay,
Chuck,
Dylan.
you do that on your own.
Love you anyway. Actually, I don't so badly, generally speaking. Most people think I do this in a fairly professional manner when people cooperate. Let's get into the topic at hand. Like I said, Fight Club. So what does this bring to my mind or to the mind of, well, listeners who might be around the same age as me or might have discovered this wonderfully done cult movie that was actually really popular when it first came around? You know, well, who did it feature? Let's see, it was Ed Norton and who's that other guy again? Pretty boy guy?
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt, right. Okay. Brad Pitt and Ed Norton, and it wasn't even like a chick flick or anything, so interesting film. So, recently, Dylan, you watched this for the first time, didn't you?
Yeah.
And being a younger person, because how old are you again, Dylan?
16.
16. I keep thinking you're 17 for some reason.
10 days.
10 more days. All right. Well, in 10 more days, happy birthday to you, or happy rebirthday, as you like. And, you know, that'll be a good thing. It's always good for you to have another birthday and stick around with us another year. And it's interesting to me what somebody your age might have thought about this movie, Fight Club, which had a lot to do with, well, my pre-awakened state and where my head was at before I became aware of the tyrannies, conspiracies, et cetera, that went beyond the JFK assassination. So what did you think, and what actually motivated you to watch the film and all that?
And I would urge you, before you start talking, Dylan, let people know if you're going to say spoilers or not, because that's a big pet peeve of mine.
The only way I can talk about the movie is with spoilers. So
okay.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Please turn off the video if you haven't seen the movie.
Thank you.
Because if you haven't seen the movie and you want to listen to us, you're not going to watch afterwards.
Let me underscore it too. If there's any movie where if you haven't seen it and you do not want to be spoiled, this is the one movie where you do not want it to be spoiled. So, and I'm going to talk spoilers too. So if you haven't seen Fight Club yet, really honestly, you need to turn it off, man. Turn it off right now and go rent Fight Club, and then listen to us on a rebroadcast, because you really don't want to cheat yourself from this movie.
Right. No, catch the rebroadcast or catch the archive on AmericanFreedomRadio.com and do that after you've seen the movie. That's for certain. You guys are right. Thank you for bringing that up, because I wasn't going to mention spoiler alert, but you're correct.
Yeah, and I keep forgetting to do it every time I talk about a movie, but I do mean to.
Mm-hmm. So
the movie won me over. It took about an hour for it to win me over, but it won me over.
Now, but before you started to watch it, I mean, what was it that motivated you to take a look at it? Because it is an older movie to you. I mean, geez, were you even born when this movie was made?
No, it was made 2 years before I was born.
Jesus, you just made me feel old.
Yeah, see, I wanted to make sure I did that because I wanted to go, yeah, damn it. I'm an old man. Exactly. So a movie 2 years before you were born, which, just for the Skype comment, I will pay attention to this one. No, it wasn't as though, they're trying to mock my age over here already before I even said anything. Say like, well.
Don't steal my job, guys.
Yeah, movies in black and white. No, movies were not in black and white when I was born in 1972, so shut up. Okay.
No.
I was born around the same time The Godfather came out, so deal with it. All right.
Which
Moving
I
on.
also have yet to see.
Oh, you're killing me. But anyway, back to Fight Club. So what motivated you to go and take a look at this movie, Daniel? Or Dylan, excuse me.
Daniel told me to watch it, 1, and 2, it's David Fincher. No David Fincher movie has ever disappointed me.
All right. So did you have any idea what the subject matter was going to be, what it was going to be about, anything like that?
I didn't look at anything. I saw the poster for it, and that's all I saw the movie going in.
Which tells you virtually nothing. Great.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So how did you go into it? I mean, what was your first impression upon lighting that baby up?
For about an hour, all I could think was, this is really weird. Why did they recommend this? And then after about an hour, it actually did win me over. Once they started to explain it, and I couldn't really hear it that well at first because they were actually pretty quiet at the start.
Well, I think that was actually purposely done by the filmmakers.
Fincher. He did that on purpose.
It was sort of to give that impression of a malaise, that psychological atmosphere where, you're in a bit of confusion, you're in a bit of a haze, you're kind of sleepwalking through things. And gee, isn't that common subject matter when it comes to the alternative media and those of us actually taking a look at the realities around us? So it was kind of apropos, but you didn't realize it upon first look, did you?
No, and actually after looking at it and thinking about it, I appreciate it more and more the more I think about it. I really do. I start to appreciate the movie a lot more for what it was doing.
Right, because at first it almost seemed like it was going to be a buddy action, kind of a bitching and whining sort of movie from the 90s, as many movies were. That's exactly what it seemed like it was going to be, didn't it?
Yeah, but then the moment I kind of realized, this is why they recommended it, was his speech when they first opened Fight Club. About money and all that.
I don't know, it's just when you buy furniture, you tell yourself, that's it, that's the last sofa I'm gonna need. Whatever else happens, I've got that sofa problem handled. I had it all. I had a stereo that was very decent, a wardrobe that was getting very respectable. I was close to being complete. All gone.
All gone. Do you know what a duvet is?
Comforter.
It's a blanket. Just a blanket. Now, why do guys like you and I know what a duvet is? Is this essential to our survival in the hunter-gatherer sense of the word? No. What are we then?
Consumers.
Right. We are consumers. We are byproducts of a lifestyle obsession. Murder, crime, poverty, these things don't concern me. What concerns me are celebrity magazines, television with 500 channels, some guy's name on my underwear, Rogaine, Viagra, Olestra.
Martha Stewart.
Arthur's polishing the brass on the Titanic. It's all going down, man. I say never be complete. I say stop being perfect. I say let's evolve. Let the chips fall where they may. That's me, and I could be wrong. Maybe it's a terrible tragedy.
No, it's just stuff. Not tragedy.
Well, you did lose a lot of versatile solutions for modern living.
No, it's... My insurance is probably going to cover it, so... What?
Things you own end up owning you.
That's when I realized why you guys recommended it to me, and when I started paying attention to it a little bit further, I did begin to appreciate it a lot more.
Right. Now, for further context, Daniel is a little bit younger than me, and you came across this movie when you were a kid, right?
Oh, when I was in my early 20s is when I came across it. I didn't when it first came out. I was like you, Chuck. You know, the name Fight Club. I thought it was like, you know, some Fast and Furious type movie with Brad Pitt. I like both actors, but I thought it was just about like a fight club. I didn't know that it was a philosophical
exactly
juggernaut.
What I thought about.
Yeah. But it is a philosophical. The movie is a philosophical juggernaut, and I think that the title Fight Club turns a lot of people away, and it turned me away for a long time until, you know, I'd rented everything else in the video store, and then finally I picked it up, and well, it didn't take me too long because, you know, I'm a chronic insomniac, and when he starts talking about, you know, when you have insomnia, you're not quite awake and you're not asleep, and I was like, okay, this isn't some movie like Rocky, you know. And when it got to the scene, which it was beautifully shot, but when he's in his apartment, if you remember, and he's ordering furniture from IKEA,
yeah.
And it pans across his apartment, and starts showing retail prices on everything.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, and he asks, he says, you know, what China set defines me as a person? That's when I perked up and I said, yep, this is right up my alley. I don't know where the hell David Fincher's going to go with it, but he's already got me on the railroad track, man. I'm ready to go. And after that, dude, I was all about it.
Well, I'll tell you what happened to me with it. My introduction to it was a little bit different from you guys, because I recall it coming to the theater and me thinking to myself, Brad Pitt is is one of these pretty boy actors, and Fight Club, well, it's probably just a pseudo become macho, get charged up, much like a Rocky movie where you're supposed to become engaged and get all pumped up about what you're watching. And I must admit, even as a kid, I used to get pumped up by stuff like Rocky 3, and I saw the first Rocky movie on a drive-in screen. So
you got pumped up about the worst of the Rocky movies.
Well, Rocky 3 wasn't so bad considering the time it was made. But here's the thing: at the time, it created a cultural phenomena where there were kids a little bit younger than me and my age that were getting involved in literal fight clubs. That all of a sudden this was being, people are imitating what they're seeing on the screen, and all of this nonsensical garbage controversy, it seemed to me, over really what is not the essential element of the film, but I didn't know it at the time. Mm-hmm. So it seemed to me like it must only be about these, guys who need to reclaim their masculinity in some way, so therefore they're engaging in bare-fisted fighting. That was about as far as I wanted to take it. Mm-hmm. Then, when it came out immediately on video, somebody told me, no, you've got to see this because it's a deep movie. Yeah. And I said to them, really? You got to be kidding me. No, it's a deep movie. You've got to see it. And I said, all right, I'll give it a chance. But, in 20 minutes, if I don't see something that doesn't indicate some sort of texture, some sort of context to anything further than just that Fight Club concept, I'm done. And I sat down and watched the whole thing, and honestly, by the end, I was in total disbelief. Mm-hmm. Because I did not realize that somebody would have the guts to make a movie that did this. Mm-hmm. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So anyway, let's go back to Dylan really quickly. So you're going through it and you realize there's this sort of muddled beginning to it. And I mean, did you think that the filmmaking was being poorly done, or
no.
did you understand that an atmosphere was being set?
Did I understand an atmosphere was being set? Kind of. I didn't know what I thought he was setting up a character, not really this entire thing, and I didn't get the whole frame, the random frames with the person inserted into it.
which was Tyler Durden.
Right, about halfway through. And about halfway through the movie, I actually did start to appreciate the movie as much as you guys, I think. I don't know if I'd go as far to say it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't think it's even my favorite David Fincher movie, but it's an extremely well-done movie. It's a lot deeper than you would expect from a movie called Fight Club.
True enough.
It's probably the deepest I've ever seen David Fincher go.
Well, there you go. And not only that, but again, it was unique in its time. It definitely wasn't something that was being reloaded, recast, et cetera, et cetera. In a day and age when we're dealing with, God help us, yet another reload of something else again and again. And I recognize that in the 80s and 90s, we were dealing with the sickness of the sequel. How many Friday the 13th got made, et cetera, et cetera. And the 6 original Star Trek movies, on and on and on. I realized that the sequel was the king then, but now the reload is the king now, and every time somebody forgets how bad one of them is, it seems as though it comes back again. Much like the Godzillas and et cetera, yeah.
Reboots and remakes can still be good. That's a completely different debate that I will be glad to have.
Yeah, I know, and we're gonna get into it eventually. And I'm gonna wait for the new Star Wars to get out there before we have that discussion. To be honest with you, because I am still skeptical.
I've got my tickets already.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
So back.
I bought into it with Kool-Aid.
Cool. Well, back to Daniel on this, right? So you start to see this, and you're noticing these subtle hints of what's going on. So what do you think was key for you? Like, when did it really grab you? Outside of the retail pricing and probably some of those blurred frames that started to happen where you're going, okay, there's something slippery going on with the reality here where I'm going to understand that some things are real and some things are not. Outside of that, when did it really grab you?
I think between the three of us, it's kind of like Goldilocks. Dylan's a little too young for it to really have impacted him. You're a little too older, But for me, at the time where it hit, I was in a, excuse my language, but I was in a shit 9-to-5 job, like the narrator of the story, and it was a point where I had, you get out of high school, and now you're into the workforce. You're doing a monotonous job. All of your childhood passions, when they told you that you could be anything that you wanted to, and here I am doing this monotonous job, making somebody else a ton of money, and then my existence as a person on Earth, comes into question. And I was very depressed at the time, and I was like, is this really what life is? Is this really why I'm here? Is to do this monotonous job that's so beneath me? It's not my passion, And the movie really speaks to that age group, where you're stuck in this grind, you're going for a 401k, it's 9 to 5. Basically, your job is to take money from one group and give it to another smaller group, and you're just a cog in a big machine, So that was like prevalent in my own life when I actually saw the movie. So I really, really identified with narrator.
If you wake up at a different time, in a different place, could you wake up as a different person?
Really, really identified with it. And the line where he says, you wake up here, you wake up there, is it possible one day that you'll wake up a completely different person? And I think this is noteworthy, that if you ever deal with movies or books or anything that are indeed deeply, deeply philosophical, there's always the element of dual identity, if you ever pay attention to it. There's always a dual identity of, okay, well, this is who I am in the waking world. I'm the narrator. Most people call Ed Norton's character Jack, but it's actually in the book, it's just narrator. But,
right.
And you create this alter ego, or in your head you have what the Matrix would call a residual self-image, or you at your very best.
Speaking of which, we have to do a review of the Matrix on here.
Yeah, eventually we do. That's going to be a big one.
But that's going to be a 2-hour discussion by itself. And just for the record, though, it came out in '99, from what I see.
I could have sworn it came out in '96.
Well,
99.
It came out in
well,
99.
that was a year after I was born then.
All right. But here's the thing about 1999. I was 8 years out of high school, and at that point, you want to talk about speaking from the narrator's point of view, I had been a musician up until just before that, pretty much. And at that point, I was pumping gas and working as a manager in a gas station.
Yeah.
Okay. So exactly when the Tyler Durden character turns around and says, you know, we're a generation of men who are pumping gas and serving meals, it was like, yeah, me.
Yeah.
All right. Exactly there. And 8 years out of high school made me, you know, what, 27 or 20, well, yeah, about 27 because I graduated when I was 19. That's the reality there for me. So to me, that whole idea about the X generation being sort of lost without a cause, okay, was very, very significant to me and was actually speaking, in my estimation, to my generation.
And one of the most beautiful parts of the movie, I know this may be morbid, but is when narrator and Tyler Durden take Raymond Kessel. If you remember, Raymond Kessel was the clerk at the gas station, and
Right.
he puts a gun to his head and says, you know, what did you want to be? What did you want to be? You know, I wanted to be a veterinarian, you know, and narrator, he thinks it's very morbid. He's like, why did you do that? That was wrong. He says, tomorrow Raymond Kessel's going to wake up. You know, the first breath that he takes is going to be the sweetest, you know, breath that he's ever taken in his life. The first meal he has is going to be the greatest meal, because we don't live the way that Tyler Durden is trying to teach, you know, narrator, which is that you might not have tomorrow. And while you're sitting there waiting for tomorrow, you know, today is slipping you by while you're pumping that gas, man. While you're waiting for your boat to come in, you know. And that was something that really, really woke me up. That was very profound because, you know, Chuck, I'm a writer, and there was a big point in my life where, you know, people tell me, grow up. And I know for you as a radio show host, people have told you, well, you're too old to start it now and all this good stuff. And they beat you down with it. And so it's a fight between our inner narrator and our inner Tyler Durden on who's going to win out. I don't mean to go too deep, but sorry, I know this is about a movie, but it's a deeply philosophical movie.
Well, right, and this is something that Dylan hasn't grasped yet because he's not done with high school and hasn't gone to that point, and hopefully he never does go to that point where you realize that you have abandoned your dreams in order to get on the hamster wheel, to just continue to have the crap for the most part that you don't need. I mean, that was really the realization that I was getting to at exactly that point in time. And being told, to grow up and to let go of those dreams and all of that was definitely something that clamped down on my spirit. So this movie is a little bit more meaningful probably to you and I than it is to Dylan. But I'm interested to hear what he thinks about that, like with the gas station, you know, with the whole thing where he mentions about pumping gas and serving meals, and then the way he takes the convenience store guy out. Because remember, again, at that time, I'm working in gas stations and convenience stores.
Yeah.
So talk about speaking to me directly without any sort of, allusion to any subtext. It was like right in my face. I mean, what did those kind of parts say to you, Dylan?
First, I want to say something about the movie. I don't think the whole thing actually happened. I think he was imagining the whole movie in his own head.
That's a good theory.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that's a good theory is because Fight Club 2 would indicate that it didn't happen.
There was a Fight Club 2?
It's in comic books, yeah. Chuck Palahniuk is writing it right now for Dark Horse Comics. And it's when him and Marla actually, I don't want to give any spoilers away, him and Marla actually have a kid. And
we already gave a spoiler alert.
Sorry. Yeah, they have a kid, and they're in suburbia, so it would indicate, I haven't read all of it, but it would indicate that the ending of the movie didn't happen, so you got a good point there.
The whole movie, I think, was up until the introduction of Tyler Durden's actual character, not the subconscious character, but the actual living representation. I think that was all real, but I think he had an insomnia dream. Because did they ever mention it again? No, they just started talking about his insomnia, and then Tyler Durden showed up, and nobody ever mentioned the insomnia again.
Well, true and not true, because at the same time, all of that traveling he had been doing and setting up all those things ahead of time had been done during his, sleepwalking, insomnia, or switch of personality, whatever. So that was referenced because he was backtracking to try and figure out before he realized that,
Now I'm going to look at Fight Club the movie as a standalone and not acknowledge as a second one. And from that point of view, I would say that it did happen.
Right.
Okay, that it did happen. That's just because I want to believe it, man.
Either way, the messages are still valid and the concepts are valid,
but
whether it's an entire dream or not. Yeah.
With that convenience store thing, I don't think I'm somewhere in the middle of the narrator and Tyler. I don't think it was morbid. I think it was going a little too far, but I think his overall intentions were good enough, and he didn't actually kill the guy. So,
but much as you understand personally, sometimes you need to shake someone up with something that is shocking. You need
absolutely, but
sometimes shoving the dog's nose in the dog crap is the only way to get him to stop crapping in the house.
Well, one of the key phrases of the movie is, "It's only when you lose everything that you're free to do anything." You know, when it's only when you hit rock bottom that you can go, "Okay, well, I tried it their way," and that's the truth, man. You got to let it go. Let go.
Stop trying to control everything and just let go. Let go.
But there's an aspect of the movie I'd like to point out because it's personal to me. But the whole concept before Tyler Durden is really introduced of him being addicted to 12-step programs, I thought that was a wonderful illustration of somebody who is miserable with their life, and they're like, okay, I'm miserable. I'm completely healthy, but I'm miserable, and has to seek out people who are dying of testicular cancer in order to feel better about themselves. I thought that dichotomy of the movie was sick, but it was also very telling of the generation that did pump gas and do these monotonous jobs. That's a sickness too. You're dying, but you're dying of apathy.
Well, what's also beautiful about that, in my estimation, is that it spoke to me about the society, all right, that was so hooked on these ideas of this structure of therapy and everything else that there was an endless array of it for him to introduce himself into, whether he needed to be there or not. And that spoke to me about the rise, really, of the severe psychological industry that has sought to drug and give the easy solutions to the masses in one way or another, and has effectively, in my estimation, I hate to say this, but has effectively created the soft cult concept as a way to cure one's illnesses, which may be real or may not be real. And Marla showing up there is a perfect example. She didn't need to be there at all. She was just there. He didn't need to be there at all. So it was, from both sides of the gender coin, both dropping into the slot of the ready-made vending machine of psychotherapy on this group therapy level. And I thought that was just a beautiful statement in and of itself. Plus, let me feel something. Let me be part of something, because I have been completely lost in the nothingness and of the cookie-cutter made world. So from both angles, to me, that was amazing. What did you think of it, Dylan?
At first I didn't really understand the whole concept of these two people just going around to these different support groups.
Call me back in 10 years.
But really, the whole movie does come together, and I really need to rewatch the movie and analyze it. Because the first time I was just watching it purely as a viewer, because you want that experience. And there are so many different layers to it that I don't think anybody can get with one viewing.
So you've only seen it once, Dylan?
I've only seen it once.
Yeah, you got to go back and watch it twice, man.
Yeah, definitely, because I was going to say, no matter at which point in your life you came to it, if you view it the first time and you don't know the story, you're taking it in from an entertainment standpoint and things catch your attention. But when you go back and watch it again, it's definitely, and people say this about a lot of movies that are not so well made, you'll catch a lot of different things. So let's move forward in the story. Of course, we have the realization that he sort of created this, again, I love the religious cult aspect of it. These guys walking in lockstep. I mean, you could also speak to the allegory of the military, the fact that there was like a military structure. What's that?
And religion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Space Monkey. Yeah, and the whole, hazing process, and you got to stand on the porch. Project Mayhem, which is, completely amorphous term for God knows what, and these people are just gravitating toward anything that'll get them to escape their meaningless lives, and this is usually the story when it comes to those that wind up falling into the military, that wind up falling into religious cults, that wind up falling into, organized religion in general in a lot of cases, but another story for another day. Fact is, or even 12-step programs, Daniel, in a lot of cases, it's because
it can become a cult too.
Yeah.
Anything can.
I think from, you can say what you will about it, but in a spiritual sense, I think Tyler Durden's motivation, whether he be right or whether he be wrong in his methods, I think that whole hazing process was his method of getting his initiates to shatter their ego, or the identity that they had in the workforce or in the system, and
he wanted to get them to start off with a blank slate.
Yeah,
everyone's equal in his in his world.
Right. Now, whether he was doing it the right way, that's up to the viewer. But I think that was kind of the thinking process. I mean, in the whole humiliation of it. You are not a beautiful snowflake. You are not your bank account. You're not your khakis,
Can we talk about the part of the movie where they say they have no names?
Yeah.
That's very significant.
Please.
Well, it sticks to your point about shattering their egos. They get rid of their identity, and they basically became pawns in Tyler Durden's game. And they were happy with it. They were blissfully ignorant, and they were blissfully ignorant. They became apathetic in a different way. They became to a different shepherd.
But this is true. And if you had met any of them at a restaurant, they would say Tyler Durden set me free, almost like a messiah figure.
Right. They began to worship him like a god. And they almost they did become sheep to a different shepherd.
Well, yeah, and isn't that the truth about what happens in a lot of cases? Even individuals that think they're becoming awake, aware, they think that they've become, infused with wisdom in the world, and quite often what they've done is leave the one camp of mind control to go down to a slightly smaller camp of mind control and fall right in line without questioning yet another figure who seems to have an oppositional position. Do we know who I'm talking about? All right. Anyway,
I believe we do.
Some people go and broadcast allegedly as an alternative media figure, and they're not much of an alternative.
Well, in my commentary is on that is I believe that the person that you're talking about, if I know who it is, started off with good intentions, but let me tell you something. When you're a charismatic figure and people start flocking to your message, the temptation to become a lord over people is a very, very strong temptation. It's very strong, and there's very, very few people that don't succumb to it. Very, very few.
That's true, and even those that have much lesser success wind up in these ego traps in a lot of cases where they wind up whining about things and becoming so involved with exactly how significant they are supposed to be, et cetera, that they wind up engaged in a lot of petty exchanges with other individuals quite pointlessly and, losing their own messages to their own behaviors and egos far too often.
Like the good book says, pride cometh before the fall.
It certainly does,
I think at a certain point, Tyler Durden did succumb to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the moment when the whole thing switches. When you come to the realization, it's like Tyler Durden became too big for himself, and he ended up kind of just disappearing, and we saw the narrator as who he really is.
Right. Because at some point, if ego is not kept in check, the message is lost amongst the man. And this happens, in group situations as well as with individuals who seem to gain a bit of popularity or a bit of position in nearly any field where public opinion or a selective audience's opinion is part of what drives the industry. I mean, that's just part of the reality. That is the point that's made here, actually, is the point that he was trying to get to, is that at some point you have to retain enough of your individuality to not simply be the lemming that follows right off the edge of the cliff, And it was, again, it's not as though it needs to be everybody totally, thoroughly, completely brainwashed. In fact, when you get people in a group, it only takes a fair number of them to control the group, and the rest of them simply follow because it's almost like part of human nature to follow along when you're so outnumbered. You know what I mean? And that kind of thing happened. Of course, it's fascinating because the central figure here is, let's just imagine that all this was going on in his own head. Pretty elaborate and pretty interesting. It seems almost too real to only have gone on in his head. But anyway, I want to get your guys' points on this because I've talked too much already. So back to it. So as this continues to unfold, I mean, and you're taking it the way you're taking it, and obviously there's a different perspective for you, Dylan, because you haven't had the grand experience of having everything taken away from you, so that you can experience the thrill of, well, since I have nothing left, I have nothing to lose, and therefore I have a different level of freedom. It becomes a different sort of concern. So how about moving forward with the story, though, as we go? I mean, what were your further impressions after that?
After they started Project Mayhem, or after we found out that they were the same person?
Well, we didn't really find out that they were the same person until long after Project Mayhem began. So we'll take it in order. Project Mayhem, and you're starting to see these seemingly guerrilla acts occurring of defiance that didn't seem to be majorly significant. I want clean food, stuff like that, right, going on. I mean, do you have anything to say about that, or should we let Daniel speak about that particular point?
Go to Daniel for a minute, and I'll bounce off of him because I'm still a little flustered. He's seen it more times than I've got a.
So Daniel, we've got Project Mayhem happening. We've got the guys fouling the soup in the restaurants, which is hysterical. And capturing people and making certain points to them about things and different stuff happening. And you're watching these seeming acts of domestic terrorism arise.
It's a reverse. It's a reverse Illuminati. It's like, for example, when they take you to that senator, I think it's the mayor. All of them get him in the bathroom.
Yep.
And they say, look, we cook your food, we walk your dogs, we drive your car. There's more of us, and we're awake now. But I think that with Project Mayhem, what it was Tyler Durden's. It was incremental Machiavellianism. I mean, ultimately, Tyler Durden, as Dylan already said, is the narrator. It's a Jesus and Lucifer scenario, both of the same person. One is the ego, and one is this alternate ego. right? So the Machiavellianism of Tyler Durden is balanced out by his conscience, narrator. I mean, ultimately, it's the same guy as we all know who's seen the movie.
Who do you think I am?
Mr. Durden. You're the one who gave me this. You know about Tyler Durden?
Tyler Durden. Tyler Durden, you fucking freak.
We're the same person.
That's right. We have night jobs because you can't sleep.
What are you saying? This is bullshit. I'm not listening to this. You are insane.
No, you're insane. You simply do not have time for this crap.
It's called a changeover. The movie goes on, and nobody in the audience has any idea.
Never pick up my phone. It's only after we've lost everything we're free to do anything.
God, they all sing and they all dance.
Crap with the world. Fuck with us. Now you fucking khakis.
We should do this again sometime.
First night at Fight Club.
Who has to fight?
You wanna finish her up?
I'm gonna fuck like that since grade school.
What did you guys do? What a shithole.
So, it isn't that Tyler Durden's bad, because ultimately Tyler Durden stops himself in one form or fashion, and this, you find this in any philosophical or spiritual outlet of, for example, Jesus in the wilderness. Where do you think the devil came from? It came from inside of himself, right? It was a battle for 40 days and 40 nights with himself, with that part of him that wanted to become a lord over everybody, and he had to resist it. And you see that in Fight Club. Whenever when a narrator figures out exactly what's going on that he's doing in his waking dream, and he starts setting about to try to put a stop to himself, But I think that Tyler Durden's motivation is Machiavellianism, because narrator sees capitalism as the machine that had him trapped, and it's his ultimate goal to put an end to capitalism by destroying all the credit unions and setting the debt back to zero, everything back to zero. But then when he finally comes face to face with his own thinking and where that takes you logically, he's like, well, this is a bridge too far, and he has to put a stop to himself. Go ahead.
But there's also a dual purpose here, though, because okay, you can take it as the logical extension of the internal struggle. I get that, but what I saw was the incremental training, which is common not only in a military sense, where you get to learn to do things by doing them, and by doing smaller things like you fire a smaller gun, then you learn how to handle a larger gun, et cetera, et cetera. So increasing the amount of danger and expertise and skill levels required by literally having them act out these much smaller operations. But you also have what let's just be blunt, what most people would refer to as the Italian mafia style of getting people involved in the business of criminality, or becoming someone who walks on the edge of the law, or absolutely breaks bends and causes chaos and destruction in one way or another, so that you're definitely in on what's going to come next, which is a much larger thing. They teach you, listen, you got to be able to beat somebody down in order to handle business. Well, after a while, the beatings graduate to, unless we know you're able to kill someone, then we're not going to trust you with our secrets about who got killed. This kind of thing. So you get sucked in incrementally. So it was a blend to me between what would be military conditioning and also the very same military style, pseudo-military style of conditioning an individual to increase their level of activity on a scale in a particular direction. If you learn to act without thinking, because you're no longer afraid, you're no longer stunned by the sound of live gunfire, this kind of thing, then you're going to act in a much more relaxed fashion when confronted with it. So I see conditioning being given to the mass there, while he is also conditioning himself.
To bounce off of Chuck's point, remember when you said, you quoted Tyler when he said that once you have nothing to lose, you're totally free. This movie also explains the danger of that. The blank slate is so much easier to condition than somebody in the situation that the narrator was in at the beginning. Somebody who has a routine is much harder to condition than somebody who is a blank slate. Tyler Durden would take people out of their comfort zone like the narrator and condition them to basically fight his war.
Well, yeah, but it's also slapping the numb limb so that the pins and needles can begin, so you can actually take back control of the movement, in one's own body as a whole. So that's what goes on. Listen, guys, we're down to the last couple of minutes, and I want to thank both of you for joining me for this interesting discussion.
Sorry, I couldn't really contribute much.
You did just fine, but you can catch Dylan's movie reviews at zeninthecar.com.
There will be more up, I promise.
Of course, zeninthecar.com, as well as Daniel Louis Crumpton, who is my other guest tonight, downloadable content over there, DLC, just like his initials, and also he's the guy behind a lot of stuff over there at Zen in the Car, but has his own section just like I do at zeninthecar.com, where you can find the Ochelli Effect as well. But I want to give you guys the last couple of little bit here anyway, whatever minutes we have left, to sort of wrap it up, because at the end, the goal of swiping the entire credit, debt system out of existence by destroying all the computers and the mechanisms by which debt is held in the greater corporate, bowels of the system. All that. I mean, what did you guys think of that as the conclusion?
That's one way to do it.
Yes.
Not the only way, but it's one way.
Certainly.
When I saw that scene, all I could think was, wow, this is really, really well shot. It was such a beautiful thing to look at.
And ultimately, the narrator didn't stop it. He didn't stop what Tyler Durden was trying to do if you watch the last scene,
No, which ultimately, I think, speaks to the David Fincher's idea that evil will, not evil, but the dark side of your conscience.
Well, I'll quote Hannibal Lecter on that one. There is no such thing as morality, only morale.
And of course,
was that from the TV series? Because I haven't seen that yet. I don't remember that from the movie.
Yes, it was.
Extremely apropos that he survives the bullet through the head area,
and
takes a tap in the dome, and before we go,
before you run out, I will say this: if you haven't bought the soundtrack, it's one of the best movie soundtracks ever. Go and get the soundtrack after you watch the movie, because it's awesome.
I completely agree. I've purchased many soundtracks. It's one of the best I've ever listened to.
Right. So check out zeninthecar.com for both of these guys, and also...
You shot yourself?
Yes, but it's okay. Marla, look at me. I'm really okay. Trust me. Everything's gonna be fine. You met me at a very strange time in my life.